Alrighty. I call this meeting of the Williamsburg-James City County School Board to order. I thank you all for coming tonight. Didn't mean to startle my vice chair here.
There was a little bit extra there on that. A little extra spin.
I appreciate everyone coming out. Ms. Serza, take the roll, please.
Ms. Cook?
Here.
Mrs. Cordasco?
Here.
Ms. Emanuel?
Here.
Mr. Fuentes?
Here.
Ms. Larson?
Here.
Mr. Nichols?
Here.
Mr. Kelly?
Here. 2.01, approval of the agenda. Can I get a motion for approval of the agenda as presented?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Ms. Serza?
Mrs. Cordasco?
Aye.
Ms. Emanuel?
Aye.
Mr. Fuentes?
Aye.
Ms. Larson?
Aye.
Mr. Nichols?
Aye.
Ms. Cook?
Aye.
Mr. Kelly?
Aye. 3.01, fiscal year 2015-2016 operating budget. Can I get a motion for the budget?
So moved.
Second.
Is there any discussion, Dr. Constantino?
Mr. Chair, members of the board, we've given you another budget summary on top of the regular budget that reflects a slight change in state revenue. Ms. Berta, can you just very quickly make sure the board understands the change in state revenue?
Good evening.
Good evening.
The changes that are reflected in your budget are reflective of the additional state revenues received as a result of the General Assembly's adoption of their budget, as well as the additional 0.01% reduction in the VRS. So instead of the 14.07 that we thought it was going to be, they actually approved 14.06. So that's the modifications that we have made into your budget presentation tonight.
The total amount of those changes comes to?
It's about $4,000 net of each other.
It's not a significant.
It's not
change.
significant.
No.
Got it.
Yep.
Can't buy a bus with that.
Yeah, you can.
I'm not sure you can put gas in it, but anybody have any discussion, questions, comments on the operating budget presented? Ms. Larson.
Thank you. What is the expected next steps once we approve this? When do you expect to present to the city and the county?
We will send the budget over to the county and the city, and then we usually are invited to their meetings. I don't have those dates yet, but there are some dates being circulated as potential times to present. We'll get those to you as soon as they're confirmed.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other comments, questions, discussion? No?
I have all the discussion that we had at the last meeting about it, so just appreciate the good work on putting the budget together.
So
In such a short amount of time.
Yeah.
Ms. Cordasco?
the summary of the operating budget personnel changes, that's just a summary of how we've changed the
Just FYI again, information.
different titles, some different moving allocation. Oh, okay.
And that hasn't changed since your initial budget presentation.
Right.
We just lifted the executive summary to represent.
Right. Yeah, that's what I saw.
Okay. Ms. Verda, thank you for your good work here. I know it's been kind of drinking from a fire hose here for the first few months of your tenure here with us, but I thank you for your good work.
Thank you.
Appreciate it, and the rest of your team and the rest of the administration putting this together. I know there's a lot of moving parts, and I appreciate the good work. It's been moved and properly seconded for approval of the fiscal year 2015-2016 operating budget. Ms. Serza?
Ms. Emanuel?
Aye.
Mr. Fuentes?
Aye.
Ms. Larson?
Aye.
Mr. Nichols?
Aye.
Ms. Cook? Aye. Mrs. Cordasco?
Aye.
Mr. Kelly?
Aye. 3.02 5-year capital improvement plan. Can I get a motion, please?
Mr. Chairman, I move the capital improvement plan as presented.
Is there a second? Second. Is there any discussion? Dr. Constantino?
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, the CIP is being presented to you exactly as it was at your first discussion. There's been no changes or modifications to the proposed CIP.
Okay. Any board members? Mrs. Larson?
Thank you. I just would like to bring up, I know that Mr. Fuentes brought up last time the Aquatic Center, and Are we moving ahead with, I know that we had requested funds for a facilities study. Are we, and I know that we did not get those funds, but are we still going to try to do something of that type if we can?
There was interest on the part of the county to do that jointly with the school system. Those discussions happened, but the study itself hasn't started.
Okay. I hope that we will continue to try to push that along, because the Aquatic Center is an example. We don't have the facilities here really to adequately provide for 3 high schools. We've had other sports that have inquired about wanting to start up at our high school, and so I think we have to get a good idea of where our facilities are in order to truly do a capital improvement plan moving forward on some of these facilities. And I realize I am appreciative of the fact that the middle school is in there. We definitely need to do that, though not the size that I would wish it to be. But again, we operated under the funds that we were given, and I appreciate all that you've done there. But I really do think that we need to push for next year being able to present what our true needs are in facilities, and even if it means things get pushed down the road, because I think there's going to be some tough decisions that are going to have to be made here about program continuation if we don't have the facilities in order to do those. And so I think that that's a real conversation that needs to take place. So just I'm hoping that we can get that facility study done. Thank you.
I think that's a good point.
Mrs. Cordasco?
I just want to say that I know we're being very conservative in our wish lists for buses, and at this point we're concentrating on replacements for buses that have exceeded their mileage and or their age. But it's one of those things that we get a lot of questions about the vocational types of training that we have available. We have vocational training available, but it's far away, and we have to make it even more inconvenient for our students. I've mentioned before, we talked about the last meeting, the Woodside campus possibly opening up for more programs, and I just feel like, again, agreeing with what Mrs. Larson said, that there's going to be a cost associated with purchasing and with running it, but we're actually then going to be benefiting from the money that we already have available to put in the New Horizons program, which is a great program. And this is something that I've heard a lot in the community. There's a lot of curiosity and a lot of desire to have these vocational programs. So I just want to, I guess my thing would be, things are very fluid with all the budgets right now. We're not sure how things are going to come down, but it's just one of those things that I think needs to be mentioned frequently because it affects what we can offer.
Very quickly on New Horizons, and Mr. Fuentes can jump in. Mr. Johnson reported to us that actually some very exciting news. New Horizons is going to begin a strategic study of its programs with the bringing of the special education building online in a year or so. That does create space. The question what to do with that space, et cetera, et cetera. I think rightfully so, Mr. Johnson has contracted with someone to look at this and create a plan, a 2 to 5 year plan. Thomas Nelson Community College is also interested in that and has put money toward the study of this and the potential use of that space. And there's actually some very exciting plans in place about what will happen specifically at the Woodside Lane campus. So to your point, things will, I think program offerings will continue to expand, and there's some talk about, there's also interest from Newport News Shipyards about looking at a program at both of those campuses. So your point is well taken, that the attractive nature of programs, I think, will increase over time because they'll become, probably, my guess would be, more STEM oriented. They will be tied to manufacturing, to the shipyard, et cetera, and so those programs will be in place.
Not to say that the programs that we have available currently.
No, absolutely.
I mean, we still have very viable programs that students are receiving jobs if they go through the certifications and the training. So I don't disagree with you at all, and I do think that it's an ongoing conversation. But I think the reality is we are having fewer participants right now because of the situation that we have with the buses. Not to mention the fact that in addition, we really can't look at changes of start times. We can't change the tiers because we don't have the buses.
And that's a great point. I in no way wanted to slight any program there now. Simply my point is, as these programs grow, the interest most likely will grow, and the problem we have will grow.
Okay.
Mrs. Larson?
Thank you. I just had a follow-up to that because I also hear a lot about vocational offerings. We could not replicate here what they're able to do at New Horizons, and the cost of a bus is a whole lot less expensive than trying to replicate vocational training here. There's a lot of offerings down there. It sounds as though there's even going to be more exciting offerings. And so the cost of an additional bus is $100,000 versus trying to, bring all that back. We found that we were not able to continue to do it well here with the numbers that we had. And so we are so fortunate to be able to have a regional programs like New Horizons. So, I think we have to look at that cost versus what we're getting from that.
And not to be ad nauseum as far as the history, but there were more programs in that Woodside campus, but as the special education population grew, more and more space was taken up, and so more were pushed down to the Butler Farm campus. So it wasn't that anybody intentionally wanted to deprive the students in this area, it's just the way it worked out. And as a matter of fact, the facilities that we had down there for special ed were not really adequate for the level of population that we were serving down there. So what is happening is a great thing, and it is a joint venture between all the other school districts and ourselves. It's going to serve the students very, very well, and then it will leave a building. And that building is what needs to be retrofitted and to put into use. So yeah, I never assume that anybody knows, because sometimes they may have watched some meeting and some of another meeting, and so so it was never intentional. We weren't trying to deny anything. It's just a matter of how things evolved in that area.
Look forward to hearing more about New Horizons.
Mr. Fuentes?
So all this talk about buses, so help me, I'll ask Dr. Constantino. Replacement buses come out of the operational budget, and then if we need new buses, they come out of the capital budget, right?
We have always put all of the bus requests into the capital improvement plan. That has been traditionally what we have done. There's always been a discussion, to be fair, about buses coming out of operations. The contract has some language in it. But since I have been here, when buses have been funded officially, it's come out of the CIP. My understanding, and I can't verify this, and so I say this with leaving the door open to being wrong, but my understanding was that prior to my arrival in prior years, the CIP had been the venue to purchase buses regardless of their use. But there has been conversation between the funding entities and the school division, apparently for years, as to where the money for buses should be housed.
Right, and what I thought the contract was that if it's operational, that if it was replacement that fell under, they agreed that it was going to be operational.
That's correct.
And then new, so given that constraint, and knowing that constraint, because I think that was what they told us last year too, when we went to it, if we do think that we have a need for the buses, new buses, not replacement buses, I mean, those are new buses too, but they're replacing existing. But new, additional, on top of that, is there a reason why we just don't put that on the list so it's on the list?
Yeah, I know what you're asking for. If we wanted to get additional buses versus just maintain our replacement plan, how many additional buses and how many dollars would that be?
Right. I mean, and I know we can't do that today, but I'm just saying that if we're going to do this next year, so we're not going through the same conversation, if we need, if we lay it all out and we need 10 more buses, in addition to the replacement buses, that should be on our capital improvement plan, is what I would suggest. Or else there will never be a conversation about it.
Right. And I have not made that recommendation to you in the last few years because of the financial situation we've been in.
I understand.
However, you approved for us earlier this year new GPS and route tracking systems and software, and
Are they
we're
Garmin's?
waiting.
Garmin's?
I'm sorry?
Garmin's?
Garmin's for everybody. Garmin's all around.
Do they have an app?
Yeah.
Stop it.
Sorry, what was I saying? Oh, anyway, so,
We approved the
Yeah.
the new
Geographic
technology for the
information
buses.
yes. We are going to use that technology, and I'm looking at Mr. Snipes to
Yeah.
make sure I get this right, to do all of the routing configuration over again to determine efficiency. Once that is done, we will have a much clearer picture of understanding bus needs and looking at options. And I think at some point early in the school year, we need to present those options to the board, saying, this many buses if you want to do this many buses if you want to do this. It's not a simple answer of buy 20 buses and solve the problem. And so I think what we're planning on doing is, I think early July, if I'm correct, we're going to get the new information based on the new routing systems. And I would suspect that earlier in the year, August, September timeframe perhaps, we would just bring this information to the board to start that discussion earlier in terms of what it would take to solve some of the challenges that we have with transportation.
Mr. Nichols?
And I would guess that that would include the employees that would have to operate the buses and aides along with it.
Every new bus requires a driver and an aide, and so there are costs associated with personnel as well. Yes, sir. And we also have to remember, Mr. Snipes reminds me often that there is an absolute need for spare buses, bus breakdowns, routine repairs and updates of buses, field trips, all of the things that are not associated with picking up and delivering kids to and from home every day. So there is a percentage of buses that has to be in the fleet to be used for that as well. Reserve buses.
Sure.
One more thing. Following up with what Ms. Larson brought up about the building study, we, a couple years ago, put in an auxiliary gym over at Jamestown. I guess it's all done. And Mr. Snipes, if I could ask, there was a plan at one time for auxiliary gym to be built. They didn't call it an auxiliary gym, but it was going to act like an auxiliary gym for both War Hill and Lafayette, and it was going to be put in the Whisk area. And then that got kind of nixed because of the economy. Is that ever going to get back on the table? Do you know?
What I was aware of, good evening, board members.
Good evening.
What I was aware of is we were contemplating building a walkway to War Hill to allow students to go back and forth over to that facility. It was as regard to an additional gym at Whisk. Is that what you're saying?
At War Hill, an auxiliary gym.
They were going to build, it was going to be built in the Whisk area so that both War Hill and Lafayette students could could walk to it. They were going to build an auxiliary gym, and it was the same. It was going to be either the same year or the year after that they did the one at Jamestown. However, because of what happened with the economy, they kind of pulled it off, and it's never been reintroduced back on.
Okay.
So you don't recall that?
No, I do not, but we can look into that.
I mean, that was one of the options that they had come up with as an alternative to building 3 auxiliary gyms. They were going to build the one at Jamestown, and they were going to build one for Lafayette. So going along with what Ms. Larson's talking about, there's 2 things that I'd like us to look at, and I think that are important, is that auxiliary gym, whatever you want to call it, although they keep talking about some basketball facility, I'm reading about, or some gym facility, which might serve the same purpose, and this aquatic center that I think would be a win-win for everybody all the way around, for everyone in the community, including the schools and our students, that I think that we should pursue if it's possible. So I just want to kind of tag along with what she said, but I wanted to bring that up about that gym, because that fell off about 2 or 3 years ago.
Yeah.
And then It never got resurrected again. So, anyway, if you wouldn't mind for next year that we can have that.
That's the board wishes. We will add it back in and look into it.
Just investigate it. Thank you.
Ms. Larson?
That's my worry about bringing it up, and why I wanted to bring it up tonight was because I think that we've been put in a position of having to put a lot of things off due to money, which I realize, but I want to make sure that we are presenting a realistic picture of what our student needs are. We're a growing school division, and I believe even with the addition of the auxiliary gym at Jamestown, they still have people back practicing. We talked about the wrestling team. I don't even think that they're able to practice in there now. I think they're still practicing someplace else because there's been a growth. And so, and I believe, I could be wrong, but I believe that gym was going to be at War Hill because they were able to grow, and but there was going to be the walkway so that the students from Lafayette could enjoy that as well. Not to be redundant, but I just want to make sure that we're not just pushing everything off and then in 2 years we come back and go, oh, surprise, we need all of this capital in order to best serve our student population in our schools. And so, I thank the work that's been done and being able to work within these parameters that we've had. I look forward to hopefully seeing a facility study that gives us a realistic look. Thank you.
Anything else? Couple of comments. I want to jump off from what Mrs. Larson was saying about New Horizons and also Mrs. Cordasco. A lot of good offerings there, CT offerings, and we could not replicate them here, particularly with the quality and the certifications and all that's required for anywhere close to a decent budget number. So taking advantage of those regional opportunities, I think, is very important. Which also brings me to the additional buses. I think we need to really put some thought into how many buses we need and to support those programs, as well as the Tawano tier issue and some others. So I look forward to Mr. Snipes coming forward in July timeframe, talking about what we've learned from our bus study, and if there's any efficiencies that we can get. I don't think there's going to be an order of magnitude efficiency development there.
I think we may shave a few minutes here and there, or a route here and there, but I don't think it's going to be a significant reduction in the need for buses. I just think that what I've learned about this is that it's not, as is the case with many things, it's not just one simple answer. It depends on start times, and what you could make some start time decisions that would actually change perhaps the number of buses you'd need. So we need to weigh all of those things, and I just think that's probably a healthy discussion for us to have toward the fall.
Right, Ms. Mann. Actually, Ms. Mann, go ahead.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I wanted to just comment on what you're saying, because we also have an advantage because we get a critical mass of students for some programs that may not have carried just in our area. Yeah. So if you get them from Hampton and York and Newport News and Pocosin and Gloucester, then you get a critical mass of people to form classes for sometimes courses that we could not offer even if we had the money, because we wouldn't have a critical mass of students.
Right.
So that's another issue that needs to be thought about.
Mrs. Cordasco.
I just want to say it may not be a bad idea, again, to invite Joe Johnson back up to talk a little bit about what programs are going and how that's happening. And I also think that the same way that we had a pretty robust discussion about the health insurance and some of the factors that we're going to have to be studying with the study group, I almost wonder if we could have some kind of a sheet of information to give us an idea of, if we were to run, say, this program in our division, how much would that cost us as opposed to what we get in New Horizons, just so that we had that at our fingertips, so we could discuss it and sound as if we really looked into it, because we can say as much as we want that we can't replicate it. Right. But if we actually say, well, we get it for $15,000 at New Horizons, but it would cost us $45,000 per student. Those are hard numbers, and we can look at it. And then also, when you look at it that way, and you think, well, wait a minute, if 3 students take advantage of that program, that's $90,000. That's the cost of a bus, which means we could do, you know, so it all is a matter of how you quantify it. And I find that, not that I want to get into the weeds or know the level of detail that what the staff knows, but it's very helpful if I have a generalized idea of the concepts, and then I can explain that more. Sure. So I hope that's not out of line to ask that.
Nope. No, and I'd throw in there too that we'd have space issues right off the bat.
Right.
So we might have to factor in where we would put the program, even if we wanted to.
Right. And Mrs. Manna brings up a good point. You know, if we have 5 kids that need a program, and the other school divisions have 5 kids, so suddenly you've got a critical mass of 30 kids there that you can actually run a program versus just 5. And so, you know,
the opportunity.
And if you look at, you know, back when years ago when I was in high school, auto mechanics, then your where you take your car to get repaired now, it looks a lot different than what that does. There's a lot more technology, and that's, when you see that, that's just investment in money. So.
And we did have an auto mechanics program, but we couldn't operate it and keep all the computerization and all of that that's necessary now.
Right. So yeah, there's a reason why we gravitated towards the regional program in New Horizons, and why we think it's important to support that, and with that would be the additional buses. So I also want to tag along to some of the comments made about the facility study. You know, as Mrs. Larson said, we have tough decisions for programs, and you know, we also understand that the city and the county had tough decisions for the facilities and the infrastructure associated with running those municipalities, and if we need to come forward with a plan of where we're going to go and what we need, which would include buses, and which would include elementary schools, and which would include, you know, keeping our current existing facilities in the shape that we need them to be to house our kids. So we need to have that study so that we can contribute a thoughtful and data generated report to the discussion. Now, we're not going to get everything that we want or need, but we need to make sure that we're bringing some intelligence to that discussion. So, and I don't want to belittle what we've done here and what we've present here in our capital plan from here to 19, but we just need to, I think we need to open the aperture and look at
Sure. And if for some reason, and I don't know this to be true, but if for some reason the interest on the part of the county has waned over this facility study, I probably would go ahead and recommend we do one anyway.
I agree.
Figure out where the money comes from later, but it was left where we were not given the funding that we asked for, but there was an interest in doing a joint study. Don't know where that sits at the moment.
Okay, great. No further discussion. It's been properly moved and seconded for the approval of the 5-year capital improvement plan. Ms. Surza?
Mr. Fuentes.
Aye.
Ms. Larson.
Aye.
Mr. Nichols.
Aye.
Ms. Cook. Aye. Mrs. Cardasco.
Aye.
Ms. Emmanuel.
Aye.
Mr. Kelly.
Aye. That brings us to 4.01, board members' comments. So are there any comments from any board members today? Ms. Cook?
I'd like to echo my colleagues' thanks to the staff and administration for this really good fiscally responsible budget. I think it preserves the staffing needed to continue the quality education that we provide the children of this community, keeping in mind the increased enrollment that we've experienced and we anticipate experiencing in the future. And I think it also, I'm pleased that it provides additional compensation for our staff while accommodating the needs of all the students. So I think it's really wonderful, and it's ours now, and I'm really excited to work with all of you to advocate for its funding in its entirety from our the localities that fund our budget. So I'm looking forward to working with all of you to make sure that happens.
Thank you. Mrs. Cordasco?
On a totally non-budget related discussion, I just want to say I enjoyed seeing Shrek and also the High School Musical too at the schools this weekend. I did get to see the Addams Family as well. Unfortunately, I was not able to get to the Seussical, but I'm sure it was wonderful too. So it was just a amazing amount of students involved in each, and lots of really, really good work. So I just want to say how much I appreciate it.
Mrs. Manuel.
I sort of want to follow on to what Ms. Cook was talking about, because I think advocacy is such an important thing. I've read in the paper that an editorial by, I can't remember, Mr. Tata, I think, who suggested that we go to SOQ rates, and I want you to know that we would be absolutely the worst school division in the state if we went to SOQ. There is absolutely no school division in this Commonwealth that is funded on up to just the level of SOQ. It is such a low standard, so I think we have a job that we have to go out and convince the community that it is our budget, and it is a budget of basic needs for us to run this school division. And I hope everyone will speak out on that and advocate in every way that you can, because I don't see, and when we read comments like that, it's very distressing. And so that's what I hope we'll do.
Mr. Fuentes.
This past week, we were at NSBA in Nashville, and a lot of good things there, learned a lot of good things, but there was one area in particular, and I've kind of touched base with you already, Dr. Constantino. I spent a lot of time with the Army people and the education people from the Army, and what I'm hoping, they have some excellent programs that they're offering that appear that at no cost that our students could benefit from, and I'm just asking that we investigate that further, and if it's in fact, and the Army guy, he gave us his card and everything, if we can work with him to get some of that, if we can possibly post that on maybe the high school websites or some of the websites, so that we can take advantage of, the students can take advantage of it for the SATs and some of the testing, and there was a lot of stuff in there that was all free, and it had nothing to do with recruiting, other than, giving the Army a good name. So, I just would ask that we pursue that further if we have the opportunity. If it looks legit, go, follow up on it and all that sort of stuff. It's a completely free, and it looks like it offered the SAT practice test and all that stuff. It looked like it was worth a lot of money, but for all our students for nothing.
It was offering the preparation for taking the SATs.
Right. And then there was some career testing also that could be used.
Career testing over the years has been very good.
Right. They have the career testing now is even better than it was in the past. It could be used just by the students and the counselors if the student doesn't want it to go to anybody else. So if we could just pursue that a little bit, and then like I said, if there's websites that that he gave out the information and the website, but of course that book's going to somehow end up on some shelf somewhere. If it get it on a website so students can use it before they take their next SAT or ACT. So that's all I have.
Thank
Ms.
you.
Larson.
Thank you. First of all, I'm going to thank Ms. Overkamp-Smith. I sent her some information about the Service Academy Day that was in Charlottesville. I don't know whether any of our students participated or not, but there were a ton of students that did go, so I hope some of our students did. That was in Charlottesville, and perhaps that might be, it was hosted at a high school. Maybe that's something that we could look into doing next year in our area with the senators. I think that would be exciting. I also want to thank you and your staff for this budget process, and certainly I realize what type of restraint that you're working under. I just want to make sure that we present a realistic picture moving ahead. So that is why I am in favor of a facility study. I want to take a moment to make the community aware of the refurbishment schedule that we are on for our facilities is a very important one, and because of the refurbishment, we've pushed that at times too, but we've gotten caught up. We are very fortunate that our buildings are in such good shape. A lot of other localities don't do these for years, and then they're faced with a huge price tag because they don't know what they have when they go in. And because our operations department works so diligently at doing these, keeping us on a schedule, We have been very fortunate, and plus we have good-looking facilities, which is very important, not for the community and for the students and the teachers that teach in the buildings. So I thank you for that. Also, there was some things raised about raises. It should be noted that there has to be, in order for the state raise, it has to be matched by the locality. So we can't just go with what the state gave us. The state will not give us that if the locality does not match that. I also would follow up on the SOQ. We do not want a school system that is based on the SOQs. We are very fortunate that we do not have that, and be happy to talk with someone about that if they'd like to give us a call on that. My idea, I agree, this is a very fiscally responsible budget. To me, fiscally responsible is making sure that you are requesting what is going to provide for a quality education. Quality education equals a quality community. That is my definition of fiscally responsible. So I hope that we'll all keep that in mind as we move forward. Also, I have a Facebook page that I do, Ruth Larson, WJCC School Board, Berkeley District, and I'm going to start posting some different things about the budget, just some tidbits about our budget that we're doing, and some things about our division if people want to go and visit that, and then they're welcome to ask me questions if they'd like. So with that's all.
Thank you. Any other comments from board members? Ms. Manuel.
Just want to wish everybody a happy spring break, a happy Easter, and a happy Passover.
Yeah, safe travels to everybody who's traveling, including me. Couple of things I'd like to reiterate. I went to see Shrek. I think Mrs. Cordasco and I were there on the same night, but on opposite sides of the sold-out performance. It was pretty. I was very impressed with that performance, and I was also very impressed with how many students that she had on stage. And I don't know how they could dance because they were all kind of elbow to elbow with the great participation out there, and I thought it was a very good performance. The same with 42nd Street Lafayette. I thought that was a great performance as well. The budget we passed tonight really kind of starts to feel the preliminary effects of the Affordable Care Act and its impacts on the entire health insurance industry. We have a PPO. We are not going to HMOs, and so we're going forward with that. However, we did talk last meeting about a health insurance task force to really look at our health insurance and making sure that for the money that we have, that we're offering our employees the best that we can, and once again still be fiscally responsible. I wholeheartedly agree with Mrs. Larson's point about our facilities, and that they're in the shape that they're in, and really the presentation that gives to our community and to people who visit our community, people who consider moving into our community, businesses that consider relocating into our community. They look at our facilities, they look at our schools, they look at our test scores, they look at our results, and they say that that this is really a quality place to be, to raise your family, to bring your employees. As we have reiterated many a time, we are the only school system on the peninsula that has continued to add students. That is a testament to our administration. It's a testament to our community and the support with which our community goes to education, which is why I am not concerned about us going to SOQs and coming down to that level. I don't think we really need to convince the community of that. I think they understand. I think they understand that it's important to all of us to support our schools, and I don't really think that's a concern at all. So, but we need to make sure that we stay engaged in discussion, and that members of the community stay engaged in discussion. So I think advocacy is very important, and we don't just hear from a certain few, but we hear from the broad community for the schools that we have and the support that we get. So, anybody have anything else? Upcoming meetings, we are all off for spring break. So April 14th at 6:30 here in Blair is our next meeting, and the one after that is April 21st over at the county at 6:30. So, and that carries us through April. So. Without objection, we stand adjourned. Thank you.